Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bearhug Club podcast. As always, Greg here, and I'm joined by Boo Garrett. How's it going, pal?
It's going well. It's going well.
And he's joined by Dog. What's your dog's name again?
Angel. Didn't
Angel.
choose it. She got it at the shelter.
Oh, bless her. As we teased at the end of last week, we're going to be talking about a promotion that's very sort of near and dear to our hearts, and especially because it's back on TV, we figured now was kind of the best time to kind of go through it. We're going to be doing a retrospective on Progress. So we're going to essentially kind of go through a bit of the history, you know, how it was founded, where like the strengths it went to, a bit about why we think it was such a success. Also going to be covering kind of the main feud that kind of put it on the map. And then we're also going to be talking about where the product's at the moment and where we think it will be going from here. I'm very excited for this episode. What about you, Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, near and dear to our hearts. We've said that a fair few times. I feel like we name drop Progress every single time we talk. But truly, like, you know, we became friends because you were a friend of mine. And we just talked about wrestling. You came over for a couple wrestling shows. And then just before you know it, it's just me and you at a Progress show, you know? Progress has always been like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a better show or a better like wrestling sort of environment I've been to. Don't get me wrong. We'll talk about some of the problems with it here.
Oh, yeah. We should point out there's going to be a big chapter where we talk about their very recent troubles because, as people might be aware, during a particular bad thing that happened last year, Progress were heavily kind of implemented, I guess you would say, or a lot of the talent was at least.
I think one of the problems is it's British wrestling as a whole, and you can't talk about British wrestling without talking about Progress wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like you were saying there, like for us, I'd say it was one of the sort of saving graces when it was in my final year living in London. So probably haven't talked about it a lot on this podcast, but obviously me and Garrod met when we were both at university in London. I stayed there for 3 years, so 3 years of study was great because I had lots of friends, met lots of new people, didn't have to work a full-time job as much. And then I tried to stay in London for a year. I had to work full-time and had very little friends left because they all scarpered from the city. But staying with you being there was a massive help, and the fact that we could go to Progress shows was kind of the saving thing in that as well. So it kept me going through some pretty tough times. So yeah, this promotion does mean a lot to me. I mean, as you can tell, people might have seen in the background of my room before, I've got my little Progress flag. So yeah, I'm a bit of a total fanboy.
Hold on, I'm gonna get my own Progress flag. Progress. What is it? It's like the eagle. I'll just do a little bird. Hold on. Wait. Progress.
Solid.
All right, cool. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we'll probably just be sharing plenty of memories and stuff as we go through, but why not? Let's just dive on in. So in kind of an ode to it, as we'll show, we're going to be doing things in chapters. So chapter 1 in the beginning, so we'll just go through a bit about the history. So Progress, as we said, is an independent wrestling promotion that is based in London, and it was formed by friends Jim Smallman and John Briley, two massive wrestling fans. Smallman was a comedian at the time, and Briley was agent. According to Smallman, it was Briley who brought up the idea of the pair running a wrestling show, which Smallman laughed off, thinking it was just a daft thought from his friend. However, he soon realized Briley was very serious when he invited Smallman along to an indie show just so they could scout some talent and get some ideas for how they would actually set up their own show. The pair spent a total of 7 months getting up the first show. Smallman is a huge fan of punk music, and as such, the pair tried to instill this kind of ethos into how the promotion would present itself, giving it a very sort of DIY, do-it-yourself feel. They also placed an emphasis on the promotion offering strong style-based wrestling, as this is one of Smallman's favorite forms of the sport, with obviously its roots and popularity mainly in Japanese wrestling. The pair would settle on London as the location, and Smallman has stated many times that this was a risky venture at the time, as despite being the capital city of England and the biggest city in England, no one was actually running wrestling shows there at the time. He would mention that various people told him it would not work, but clearly the pair saw that gap in the market, especially as around about the time they formed was when the wrestling boom was really beginning. So obviously ICW in Scotland had been around since 2006, but then not just Progress was starting up in the kind of same year, things like Attack Pro Wrestling in Birmingham as well, just to kind of name a few. They would sell on the Garage in Islington for a venue due to its modest size, which is about a 350 capacity, and its solid reputation as a music venue. The first show took place around on the 25th of March 2012 with an impressive card of future big names in the business, such as Noam Dar, Zack Sabre Jr., and Zach Gibson. So kind of leading off into that, Garrett, what were your kind of sort of memories of wrestling in the UK growing up? Did you ever actually have any promotions nearby anywhere you were growing up, or was it just kind of a case of waiting for WWE to kind of tour?
So I'm from the south, not London south. I'm south of south. I'm like right where Devon kicks
You're right
down.
in the corner.
The only thing more south of me is like just a little flick of Cornwall. And honestly, the thought of British wrestling as a kid wasn't even something that crossed my mind. I grew up in the Attitude Era, and honestly, I don't remember a time where I was like, where I thought about wrestling in the UK as a kid. You know, when you're a kid and you're like, oh, I could learn to wrestle, I could wrestle in a promotion. It was just going to America and wrestling. I didn't have any idea about the some of our origins in world of sport and things like that. And in terms of shows, them coming down to Plymouth felt like a rarity, and I never got to go. I remember at the time mother's boyfriend's sons were staying, and I had to work up the courage to be like, hey, do you guys want to go splits on WrestleMania? And they said that child shit. And I was like, I don't know, 9. So I was like, yeah, child shit. But no. No, I didn't think of British wrestling as a thing at all. And I barely knew about Progress until I came to uni and sort of started hanging out with you and just learning about how deep it goes. And now, knowing about sort of its roots in Blackpool, Birmingham, and just all over the UK. It's very interesting to sort of to be able to go to a Progress show and be able to go to these sort of local shows now. After Progress, I've been going to like tiny little shows that are basically, the ones where it's just like the poster was designed probably worse than that. Yeah.
Like very bashed Photoshop job kind of thing.
Yeah. Those I feel like we need to do a whole segment on just like terrible wrestling shows. But yeah. Anyway, sorry, I went on a complete tangent. Progress is pretty good.
That's our typical thing here, isn't it? No, I'm kind of the same. So growing up, there's not that much difference between us, really, is there? So we kind of went through the same.
Yeah, you're like 36, I'm like 22, so.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah. My hairline's about that.
Any more stress if this is all gone?
Get fucked. So I was kind of the same growing up. I think especially growing up when you were a kid and into your teens, particularly in the UK when we did, wrestling just wasn't a thing other than what was on TV, and it was very American. Like that's the thing. If someone didn't call it wrestling, it was just called like American wrestling, which was kind of very apt. Like the idea of British wrestling, I had no idea about. I remember knowing that there was vaguely, obviously, a British wrestling scene and what World of Sport was. Do you remember? This was not a very long thing, but there was actually a Sky channel just called the Wrestling Channel. Did you ever come across this?
I don't think I had Sky very early in my life.
Okay.
I had it later.
I think I was about in my like early teens when I discovered it, and it was pretty cool. Like I think you sometimes would get Ring of Honor stuff on there, but it was mainly like a lot of repeats of World of Sport and things like that. So I did have a vague knowledge of what that was, but not to the extent I knew how big it was, for example. But yeah, I was kind of the same. There was no kind of promotions. If there was something local wrestling, again, it's like the kind of trash wrestling. It was just like in like a community hall, and it'd be people pretending to be the Undertaker, for example. You know, like the whole big thing of UK Undertaker and things like that. And then the only time I was lucky enough because I grew up in Durham, and that's literally 20-minute drive from Newcastle, and WWE always pretty much runs, when they do the house shows, runs a tour at the arena. So I got to see WWE at the arena a couple of times. But for me as well, like I really didn't dip my toes in indie wrestling until I came to uni, and Progress was kind of the gateway for that. Like just by pure chance, one time I just decided to. I think I remember seeing videos on it on YouTube, and then I just got the subscription, and then from there it took off, and then obviously we started going to shows, and that was quite a regular thing when we could. But yeah, it just wasn't really a thing, and obviously that's kind of a big thing. A lot of wrestlers look back on now and say, yeah, there was just no scene in the UK, and it was because of things like Progress, ICW, Attack, whatever, that the scene kind of bloomed. So they've all got their own equal part to play, essentially, as well.
Yeah, I think it very much bled into what I saw or imagined in British wrestlers as well, because as a kid, there really weren't that many. What are you barking at? Can you hear people outside? All right. Well, as a kid, there weren't many British wrestlers or anyone from like, you know, even Ireland. You had Sheamus and Finlay.
I mean, we had William Regal as a kind of golden boy. You know
that's all I can remember. But even William Regal, when I was growing up, was still, you know, towards the end of his wrestling tenure. He was still the best, but that's beside the point. Whereas you look now and you've got you've got NXT UK. You've got Rev Pro, you know, like representing New Japan, and it's I know that we probably aren't the best people to say like the UK is one of the best places for wrestling in the world, but like I feel I would assume that it's fairly well regarded as one of the better areas in the world for wrestling. Possibly not to wrestle, I don't know, but like in terms of its production of wrestlers.
Yeah, I'd say we are, but I think that is part and due for the fact that we didn't have a scene. I think it just caused, because when you see and listen to all these wrestlers, there's all kind of the same mindset. Like they basically wrestled in a non-existent scene to the point where either they were setting up shows themselves, or it was just the fact there was like-minded people. Like again, because Jim Smallman and John Bradley, they were just, even though they were in the entertainment industry, they were just two fans who decided one day that they wanted to run a wrestling show. And it's like it's minds like that essentially helped the scene grow. And I think because of that, that's why the talent pool for such a small country was so massive. And then, I mean, the fact that WWE made a TV show based in this country on the back of that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's good that NXT have kind of done that, it feel like it's still too early to tell. On the heels of the pandemic, well, practically still on the ball of the foot, the pandemic, but